Hello friends and potential friends. Those of you that saw my last video on the perils of trying to grow food in Florida probably got to see my collards all wilted down and limp. Well, that happens basically every day. Shortly before the sun starts hitting the collards in the morning, they start to droop because of the heat. Then the sun hits them and they go limp. And then in the evening, after the sun has passed them and it starts to cool down a little bit, then they stand back up again. But I have noticed that I'm having a lot more of the leaves starting to yellow pretty quickly. So I figured I'd better do another picking and do something. As you can see, I got a sink full of collards I just picked. Now my problem is I got a freezer full too. All them bags over there came out of the freezer. Freezer was full and there was not room to put anything else in there. So it's time to start canning. As you can see, I got a bunch of jars in the background there that I've been scrubbing most of the morning. Got them heated up good, cleaned up real good, and now I'm going to see how many of them things I can fill up with collards. I think there's actually a little bit of mustard greens mixed in here too, but that's okay. Just add a little bit to the flavor. So anyway, how I prepare my collards, these have all been cleaned several times actually. Let's see, that is my compost bucket. Basically, I just go right down each side of the main stem, remove the main stem, and put the rest of it aside. Grab another one. Any bad spots, I go ahead and cut out. Bugs have hit these a little bit, not too badly yet. Though I did notice when I was picking out there this morning, it seemed to have a lot of white flies coming off of them. So I don't think the collards are going to be much longer for this world. So I better get something done with them as quick as I can. But I know a lot of people take the stems and chop them up and cook them and add them into their jars. I find that they just tend to be a bit too stringy for my liking. So instead of putting them in the jars, I'll just put them in the compost, let them turn into more collards next year. But that's the technique that I use. Once I get a few of these cut up, then I just take and cut them into strips. You can cut them whatever size you want the final product to be. And then normally, once I get them cut into strips, I throw them in a freezer bag and throw them in the freezer. But today, I'm putting them in my water bath canner so I can wilt them down and get them ready for the next step. Now you don't need to sit here and watch me remove the stems from all of these things, so we'll just put you on pause and bring you back when there's something less boring to look at. Okay, got the collards that I picked, cut up and put in my water bath canner. Also gathered all of those that came out of the freezer and stuffed them into the canner. Now I'm just going to use this to wilt down the collards. Also chopped up one onion and put in there, and a few cloves of garlic. And then I also, some people say to steam this, some people say that to boil it. I'm going to do a combination of both. I did add 1 quart of chicken broth and 1 quart of water to that. So it'll have some juice in there to help it to cook down and wilt down. And then we'll see what they turn into once they're all wilted down. I'll bring you back then. Okay, green's been cooking for a while. You can see they've reduced down about half of the volume. Hope I got enough jars. So basically the next step is to get them in jars and put them into the canner. Now I'm going to put half a teaspoon of canning salt in each pint jar, and also I'm going to put a little bit of bacon in each jar. Because of the bacon, I'm going to have to pressure can these things for a total of 75 minutes. That's because of the meat product. 75 minutes for pints. I think it's 90 minutes for quarts, but I hardly ever do quarts. So, and I think the recipe for the collards themselves actually calls for 70 minutes for pints. So because of the bacon, I'm going to do 75. Okay, let's see if I can do this to where y'all can see. Half teaspoon of canning salt. And 1 strip of bacon. Guess I could cut that up a little bit. And then we're going to grab some greens. I heated up this jar a little bit because I did not want to be putting hot. I better do it this way. Did not want to be putting hot greens into a cold jar. That is a recipe for disaster. Where's some of my tools? Okay. So I'm going to stuff these guys in here. Try to leave about 1 inch of headspace at the top. Of course, I'll be filling it up with water too. I've got some hot water over here. How's that looking? Yeah, a little bit more. These things do compress down pretty good when you cook them. There, put another jar in here to be warming up. Okay, top it off with water. And that is warm water. And go down in here with my little bubbling tool to make sure I get all the bubbles out. Then we'll take a little bit of vinegar and go all the way around the lid real good. Make sure there's no cracks, no chips, no runs, no errors, none of that stuff. Come over here and grab a lid, set that on like so. Grab a ring. Ouch. Like so. And we got one done. Now I'm sure you've watched plenty of canning videos, so you know what it takes to put veggies in a jar. So I'm not going to make you sit here and watch all of these. Okay, there we have it. 16 pints of collard greens with a little bit of mustard greens mixed in with them. Next step, of course, I got about 2 to 3 inches of water in the bottom of the pressure canner. Had to do 2 layers. This one holds 16 pints. Put a little bit of oil around the gasket. And now we're going to close the canner. Put it on high. And wait for it to start bubbling. Once the steam starts coming out of the overflow up here, the pressure valve will probably pop up, may or may not. Once the steam starts coming out good and solid, I'll let it go for 10 minutes. Then I'll put the weight on it, bring it up to about 10 or 11 pounds of pressure, and let it process for 75 minutes. So we'll bring you back when we get that finished. And there comes the steam coming out steady, so I'll set the 10-minute timer. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. As you can see, the pressure valve has popped up. Now, put the jiggler on. And here we go. Now we just bring it up to pressure. Once we get it to 10 pounds of pressure, actually I run it a little bit over 10, between 10 and 11. I'm pretty much right at sea level here, so I don't have to do any fancy math or anything. Once we get that up to pressure, I'll turn the stove down and set it up to hold pressure. I found with this cooker or this canner, once I get the pressure stabilized, it'll pretty much stay stabilized until about the last 15 or 20 minutes of the processing time. So from that point on in particular, I have to watch it like a hawk. Usually bring a chair in here and sit in here and watch the pressure gauge and sweat. And time. Okay, pardon me for getting in front of you. Now I'm going to shut off the stove and move this guy back off of the heat. And now we just let it cool down and depressurize on its own. Taking 1 to 2 hours probably. And once it's come down to normal pressure, then we can open it up and see what we've got. I'll bring you back then. Okay, it's been almost 2 hours. The pressure's down to 0. The pressure valve has fallen down. Let me see what I can do here. Okay. There, if I get scalded, you might as well be a witness. This is the part that always makes me nervous. Didn't explode. Okay. Carefully release the lid. Remember, always lift it away from you. Contents are hot. Set that off to the side. Now let's see what we got in here. Not bad. Still bubbling. They'll keep bubbling for a while. Put that over there. Grab another one. And That's enough for now. You've seen people pull jars out of canners before. And there we are. 16 pints of collard greens. And I just heard another ping. It's 3 or 4 so far. Let these sit on the counter overnight, and tomorrow we'll check the seals and wipe them down and date them and put them in the pantry. Oop, there's another one. Good night all.